Imagine this for a second. You wake up one morning, grab your phone, and you see that a whole week has passed. But you can barely remember what you actually did with your time. Days just blurred together. You went to work, maybe scrolled online, maybe made a few plans, but nothing really stood out. And then you wonder, am I just living the same day over and over again? I think we've all had that feeling at some point, where life feels like autopilot. But here's the thing, every single day that slips by is a day we never get back. And if we're not careful, one day turns into a week into a year, and suddenly we're asking ourselves, where did all that time go? You know, Simon Sinek once said, working hard for something we don't care about is called stress. Working hard for something we love is called passion. And I want you to pause on that for a moment, because isn't it true that so many of us are working incredibly hard, but we're not actually fulfilled? We wake up, rush through our day, and before we know it, another week has passed, and we can't even remember what made it meaningful. Here's why this matters. Life doesn't happen in the big, flashy moments. It's built in the quiet, everyday choices we make. When you start to think differently about your time, when you anchor yourself to something bigger than just the what of your work, you begin to see that meaning is everywhere. That's why the first point is this. Your why matters more than your what. You can do the same task for two entirely different reasons, and it will feel completely different. Filing papers, for example, is boring if your only goal is getting through the day. But if your why is to build a career where you learn discipline and attention to detail, suddenly even the smallest tasks take on. So we've talked about finding your why and building habits that give it shape. But let's zoom out for a moment and look at something even bigger, the way we see time. Here's the truth. Most of us live as if time is unlimited. We waste it like it's loose change we can just toss around. But deep down, we all know it isn't. Time is the one currency you can never earn back. And when you start seeing each day as part of a limited account, you begin to spend it differently. There's this idea that really shifted my perspective. Imagine you wake up every morning and your bank account is filled with $86,300. But here's the catch. You can't save it. At midnight, it disappears, and tomorrow you'll get a fresh deposit of another $86,400. Would you just let it slip away? Of course not. You'd be intentional about how you used every dollar. Well, guess what? That's how many seconds you get every single day. 86,400. At midnight, they're gone forever. And how you choose to spend them, that's your life. Now, this isn't about pressure or guilt, it's about awareness. If every day is made up of 86,400 little choices, then even the smallest shift, how you start your morning, how you talk to a loved one, how you treat yourself, matters more than you realize. Which brings us to the third point. Stop waiting for someday. You know how we often say, someday I'll start that project, or someday I'll travel, or someday I'll change. Here's the thing. Someday isn't real. It's a trick we play on ourselves to delay living. There's no calendar date called someday. There's only today. Think about all the times you've said, I'll start when I have more time. But time doesn't suddenly appear. You create it by deciding. You don't need a perfect moment. You just need a start. Here's a practical step. Pick one thing you've been putting off, something small but meaningful. Maybe it's writing a page of the book you want to create, or finally signing up for that class, or reaching out to someone you've lost touch with. Don't wait for someday. Do it today, even if it's just one tiny action. That's how momentum is built. And here's the surprising part. Once you stop waiting and start moving, opportunities begin to show up. It's like life rewards action. Doors you never noticed suddenly crack open, and people you need to meet cross your path. But none of that happens if you're stuck waiting. Now, let's talk about something that ties all of this together, the power of perspective. The truth is, two people can live through the exact same day and experience it in completely different ways. One person sees it as boring, repetitive, meaningless. The other sees it as a chance to grow, to connect, to move forward. The only difference is the lens they're looking through. You don't need a perfect life to live meaningfully. You just need to choose your perspective. That annoying commute. We've talked about your why. We've talked about habits. We've challenged the idea of someday, and we've shifted the way we see time. But here's the question. How do you actually keep this alive? Because let's be honest, motivation fades. Life gets messy. You'll have days when you wake up tired, days when everything feels heavy, and the last thing you want to do is push forward. That's where the final point comes in. Consistency beats intensity. Most people think change is about big, dramatic action. They picture themselves quitting their job, moving to another city, or starting a business overnight. And sure, those bold moves can work for some people, but for most of us, it's the little repeated actions that shape us. Consistency isn't glamorous, but it's powerful. Think of it like this: brushing your teeth once for an hour doesn't do much. Brushing for 2 minutes every day does. The same goes for life. You don't need to overhaul everything in one massive leap. You just need to show up, even on the days you don't feel like it, especially on those days. Because every small action, repeated enough times, becomes who you are. So if you've been telling yourself, I don't have what it takes to stay motivated, stop worrying about motivation. Focus on consistency instead. Build tiny systems that keep you on track even when your mood isn't there. For example, set your workout clothes next to your bed so that when you wake up, the first thing you see is a reminder to move. Or keep a notebook by your nightstand so that reflection becomes part of your nightly routine. Don't wait to feel inspired. Set up your environment so it pulls you forward automatically. And here's another secret: celebrate small wins. We often overlook the tiny victories because we're chasing the big ones. But those small wins are fuel. If you only celebrate when you hit a huge goal, you'll spend most of your life feeling like you're falling short. But if you pause to recognize that you kept a promise to yourself today, no matter how small, you'll build momentum. Consistency isn't just about discipline, it's about joy. It's about creating a life where you can look back and say, I didn't waste my days,